I still remember the exact second everything started to crack. Her phone lit up face down on the kitchen counter, vibrating like it had a heartbeat of its own. I wasn't trying to snoop, I was just walking past, but the preview text caught my eye. "Did you tell them what he did when you ignored him for 3 days?" My stomach dropped, because I hadn't ignored her. She was the one who'd been distant lately. I picked up the phone, expecting some harmless group chat nonsense. Instead, I saw a thread of strangers, dozens of usernames I didn't recognize. And she was talking about me. About us. In detail. Not just complaining. Describing me like I was a case study. I put the phone back down immediately, hands shaking, telling myself there had to be context. But something in me already knew this wasn't normal. Not even close. That was the moment the floor started to give way beneath my life. We had met 3 years earlier at a mutual friend's birthday. She was the kind of person who filled a room without trying, laughing too loudly, touching your arm when she spoke, making you feel like you were the only person she actually saw. I was 34 then, recently out of a long relationship that had drained me completely. I wasn't looking for anything intense. Just something calm. Safe. She felt like that at first. We moved slowly, or at least I thought we did. Weekends together turned into her practically living at my place. My friends liked her. My sister adored her. Even my mother, who trusts no one, said, "She's sweet, isn't she?" There were small things I brushed off. Her phone always face down. She laughed at messages she wouldn't show me. She had online friends she never really talked about. But I told myself that was just modern life. Everyone has their private corners. I didn't realize I was standing outside a locked door the whole time. Looking back, the signs weren't subtle. I just didn't want to interpret them correctly. She spent a lot of time on her phone, not in a normal scrolling way, but in long, intense bursts where her expression would shift depending on what she was reading. Sometimes she'd smile softly. Sometimes she'd look almost guilty. When I asked, she said it was support groups, or forums. For mental health, relationships, things like that. I didn't push. I wanted to be the kind of partner who trusted instead of interrogated. But there was something else. She started narrating our arguments differently afterward. Like she'd already discussed them with someone else before I even knew they were resolved. "You wouldn't understand," she'd say. "I already talked it through." It made me feel like I was always arriving late to my own relationship. Still, I stayed quiet. I thought maybe she just needed an outlet. I had no idea I was the topic of that outlet. The first real crack wasn't even about cheating. It was about language. She started repeating phrases that didn't sound like her. Words like emotional accountability and attachment triggers, said with a rehearsed confidence that felt borrowed. One night, after a small argument about her coming home at 3 a.m. without texting, she told me, "You're displaying controlling tendencies." It wasn't what she said. It was how quickly she said it, like she'd already been coached. That same week, I noticed she was deleting notifications before I could see them. Not hiding the phone anymore, actively managing what I could and couldn't accidentally witness. I started sleeping badly. Waking up at 4 a.m. with the feeling that something in my life had already gone wrong and I just hadn't caught up to it yet. But I still didn't confront her properly. I was afraid of being the paranoid partner. The insecure one. The stereotype. So I kept swallowing it. Until I couldn't. I didn't mean to find it. I swear I didn't go looking. She left her laptop open one evening while showering. A chat tab was still active. I saw my name in the corner of the screen and froze. Curiosity beat restraint. It wasn't just one group. It was multiple threads scattered across platforms. She was telling strangers everything. Our fights, my habits, my insecurities, even private moments that should have stayed between us. But worse than that, people were responding. Advising her. Encouraging her. Feeding her interpretations of me I didn't recognize. "He sounds manipulative," You should keep your options open. You don't owe him loyalty if you feel unheard. And she was agreeing. Reacting with emojis. Laughing. I scrolled further and felt my hands go cold. Because buried in one thread, she casually mentioned meeting someone else. Not emotional. Not abstract. Physical. My brain refused to process it at first. When she came out of the shower, I was still sitting there, staring at the screen like it might rewrite itself if I blinked. "What is this?" I asked. She didn't even look surprised. That was the worst part. "It's just talking," she said, like I was overreacting. I needed perspective. I pointed at the messages. "You're talking about me like I'm some problem you're trying to diagnose." She sighed, like I was exhausting her. "You don't understand how helpful it is. They help me process things." Then I saw it more clearly, the way she separated us into public discussion and private reality. I asked about the cheating message. She hesitated for maybe a second too long. "It wasn't serious," she said. "It didn't mean anything." That sentence did something irreversible inside me. Because it meant there wasn't just betrayal. There was scale. Casualness. Pattern. And I suddenly realized I might not be the only one. I wish I could say I confronted her calmly, but I didn't. I went through everything. Every chat. Every timestamp. My mind building a map of damage I couldn't stop expanding. There were names. Dates. Hotel mentions. Met through XApp. Just needed to feel wanted. It wasn't one mistake. It was multiple. Across months. Maybe longer. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't even sound like mine. "How many?" She tried to minimize it at first. "You're making it sound worse than it is." I remember laughing, actually laughing, because I thought I was going to break. "Just answer the question." Silence. Then, "It depends what you count." That was the moment I stopped feeling like I was in a relationship and started feeling like I was in a collapse. She said she didn't seek it out. That it just happened when she was emotionally overwhelmed. I asked her why strangers. She said it felt safer. Safer than me. That sentence didn't anger me as much as it hollowed me out. Because it meant she had been building a parallel emotional life for a long time. Not just cheating physically, but outsourcing intimacy, validation, even conflict resolution to people who didn't know either of us. I asked if she ever told them the truth about me. She shrugged. "My truth, yes. My truth. Not the truth." I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, trying to locate myself in the story she was telling about my own life. I couldn't find me anywhere in it. It felt like I had been rewritten without permission. And I didn't know how to argue with a version of myself that existed in other people's minds. The first real confrontation lasted hours. She cried. Not immediately, but strategically, like it arrived after the arguments stopped working. "You invaded my privacy," she said at one point, as if that was the main issue. I asked her again about the cheating. She didn't deny it anymore. But she reframed it. "It wasn't about you." That line hit harder than anything else. Because I realized she wasn't trying to justify what she did. She was trying to remove me from the equation entirely. At some point, she grabbed my hand. "We can fix this," she said. "You just need to understand me better." I pulled away without thinking. And I saw her expression change, not sadness, not guilt. Annoyance. Like I was refusing a reasonable solution. That's when I knew we weren't negotiating a relationship anymore. We were negotiating reality. The next few days were a blur of arguments that never resolved anything. She accused me of being controlling for checking her messages. I accused her of living a double life. She accused me of not meeting her emotional needs. I accused her of rewriting history. Every conversation ended the same way: exhaustion, silence, then her leaving the room first. At one point she said, "You're not the only person I talk to about this stuff." That sentence was meant to hurt. It did. But it also clarified something. I was competing with an entire network of strangers who already had her trust. People who only saw fragments of me, filtered through her perspective. And I was losing to them. Not because they were right. Because they were always there. I started sleeping on the couch without deciding to. Just ending up there. Like my own home was slowly no longer mine. The emotional crash didn't happen in one clean moment. It was more like falling asleep standing up and waking up mid-fall, over and over again. Some hours I was furious. Not shouting, not even outwardly expressive, just pacing through the apartment like I could physically wear down the thoughts in my head. I would rehearse conversations I would never actually have, saying everything in the right order, imagining her finally understanding the weight of it. Then, minutes later, I'd be completely still, sitting in the dark, realizing I had been in love with someone who was emotionally elsewhere the entire time and I just didn't notice how far gone she was. Shame started creeping in too. Quiet, persistent. Not because I thought I caused what she did, but because I kept asking myself how I missed so much. How long had I been the safe option, while she lived another version of herself elsewhere? I stopped answering friends. Not out of avoidance exactly. I just couldn't translate it into words that didn't sound absurd. My girlfriend cheated and discussed me with strangers. Doesn't land properly in normal conversation. It sounds like exaggeration, even to me. Work became automatic. I'd sit in meetings nodding at things I wasn't processing. My manager asked me twice if I was okay. I said yes both times, because explaining the truth felt impossible. What I didn't expect was how much of my identity would collapse with the relationship. Not just losing her, but losing the version of myself that believed I understood my own life. When it finally stopped being private, it didn't come from me. It never does in situations like this. One of the people she had been talking to, one of those anonymous advisors from her chat circles, somehow connected dots between accounts and started sharing screenshots with mutual contacts. I still don't know the exact chain, but suddenly it wasn't contained anymore. People started looking at me differently. Not openly hostile. Not supportive either. Just that quiet shift where you can feel you've been turned into a topic. My sister was the first to distance herself completely from her. No explanation, no debate. Just a message saying she didn't want that kind of energy around her anymore. My mother called me in a careful voice I had never heard from her before and asked if I was safe at home, which made something in my chest tighten in a way I didn't expect. I hadn't thought of it like that. I had thought of it as betrayal, emotional chaos, confusion, but unsafe reframed everything. I started realizing how much collateral damage there was. Not just between us, but around us. Friends choosing sides without wanting to call it that. Conversations becoming shorter. Invitations stopping without explanation. I moved my things out slowly over 2 weekends, almost ritualistically. No argument, no final confrontation. Just boxes, tape, and silence. She watched at one point and asked, almost disbelieving, "You're really just going to leave it like this?" As if there had been some version of events where it ended cleanly. But nothing about it was clean. It had just stopped earlier than either of us admitted. Leaving didn't feel like relief. That's the part one didn't expect. Everyone assumes there's a moment where you walk away and suddenly breathe again. But for me it was more like stepping out of a loud room into a quieter one and realizing the noise had been holding everything together. There was no final dramatic fight. No cinematic closure. Just a long, stretched-out erosion where everything important had already been said too many times and no new language existed to fix it. She tried again after I started moving out. Not immediately hostile, not immediately apologetic either, more like strategic emotional outreach. Messages about therapy. About both of us contributing. About how people grow through these things. She framed it as something expandable, something recoverable if I just participated differently in the aftermath. But I couldn't get past what I had seen. Not just the cheating itself, but the infrastructure around it. The way she built parallel emotional spaces where I was only one version of a story she told differently depending on the audience. I didn't respond to most of it. Then I stopped responding entirely. Blocking her wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was just turning off a channel that had been leaking into everything else. Still, I caught myself checking my phone out of habit for weeks afterward. Not hope. Just conditioning. Like my nervous system hadn't updated yet. The months after were worse than the breakup itself. That surprised me too. There's a phase where you expect grief to feel like sadness. What I got instead was fragmentation. Memory didn't feel reliable anymore. I would replay conversations and wonder what I had missed in real time. Not just red flags, but entire conversations where I now questioned whether I had ever actually been present in the same emotional reality she was in. I started asking myself when exactly I stopped being a partner and started being a character in her external narratives. That question got stuck in my head more than anything else. I tried dating again too soon. That was a mistake I can admit plainly now. I wasn't looking for connection. I was looking for proof that trust still existed in a form I could recognize. Instead, I compared everyone to a standard that didn't make sense anymore. I didn't trust smooth communication. I didn't trust consistency. I was always scanning for the hidden second audience. Therapy didn't fix anything in a satisfying way. It didn't erase the past or reframe it into something neat. It just forced me to sit with the uncomfortable reality that I had been living inside a relationship where I was never fully the only participant in the conversation, even when I thought I was. Some nights I still replay it. Not out of longing. More like my brain trying to reconstruct missing context that will never fully exist. What stays with me isn't the cheating anymore. Not in the way I thought it would. It's the dislocation. The realization that someone can exist beside you, share routines, intimacy, daily life, and still maintain a completely different version of you somewhere else, shaped by people you've never met, and conversations you were never part of. That's what I still struggle to fully file away in my head. Not betrayal as an event, but betrayal as a system. A structure that ran parallel to our relationship the entire time without me noticing its scale. I don't think I'm angry now. It's more like distance that doesn't fully close. A kind of emotional geometry where the shape of what happened is clear, but the center point feels unreachable. I've tried to make meaning out of it, but even that feels slightly dishonest. There's no clean lesson that wraps it up. Just awareness that I didn't understand how divided a shared life can become without obvious fractures. Sometimes I wonder what she says about it now, in whatever circle she still moves through. Then I stop myself, because that question leads nowhere useful. What I do know is this: I don't build trust the same way anymore. Not slower exactly. Just more aware that closeness doesn't guarantee shared reality. And that's the part one still haven't fully made peace with.